Two quotes for the same job in the same week. One seller wanted $4, the other wanted $290. I spent an afternoon trying to work out which one of them was lying to me. Neither of them was. One had priced the job per gigabyte of traffic. The other had priced it per port per month. The work was identical and the two numbers had almost nothing to do with each other. That is what a proxy pricing page does to you. It puts a large friendly number in the middle of the screen and leaves the unit in the small text underneath. And the unit is the whole argument. Why I am the one saying this. I sell mobile proxy lines. SIM cards on Singapore carriers. Modems on a shelf in my flat, roughly $10 a month per line in carrier data, and another $1.50 in modem depreciation. I price per port per month, so I have an obvious commercial interest in you deciding that per port is the same unit. I also buy other people's proxies for my own scraping. That is where I have been caught out by pricing pages I skimmed instead of read. One more thing before the sums. Every dollar figure in this video is invented, so the arithmetic works. Do not go looking for those prices on anyone's site. The 5 units. A headline price is per something, and there are 5 somethings in common use, per gigabyte. You pay for traffic that moves through the proxy, metered in both directions. Per port, you rent one endpoint for a month. Traffic is unlimited or kept high, and what you are buying is the line itself. Per thread, you pay for how many requests can be in the air at once, and nobody counts your bytes. Per IP, you pay for a named address, usually static, usually by the month, per successful request. Mostly the scraping IP sellers. You hand over URL, they deal with the blocking, and you pay when something comes back with a 200 on it. The same job, 5 totals. Take an ordinary job, 100,000 product pages a month of a retailer that pushes back a bit. Each page runs about 400 kilobytes. Once you count the HTML, the JSON calls the page fires behind itself, and the redirect on the way in. Call it 40 gigabytes a month. At $6 a gigabyte, that comes to $240, and it climbs every time the target adds another tracking script. On ports, you might need 4 of them to hit your concurrency, and at $40 each, that is 160. The 40 gigabytes cost you nothing extra. On threads, those 4 threads might run you $60, and again the traffic is free. On successful request, at $1 per thousand, $100. And it stays $100 whether the pages weighed 400 kilobytes or 4 megabytes. 4 sellers behaving perfectly reasonably. 4 answers. 1 job. The ordering also flips the moment the job changes shape. Make the pages heavier and the metered plan loses badly. Drop the volume by a factor of 10 and the metered plan wins by a mile. What is actually inside a gigabyte? On a metered plan, this is the part that sets your bill, and it is almost never written down anywhere you can find it. Response headers count. They travel in both directions on every single request, and on a site with a long cookie, they are not nothing. Redirects count. A page that bounces you through 2 hops before it serves anything has billed you 3 times for 1 page. The TLS handshake counts on some meters and not on others. Ask which? Images count if your headless browser fetches them, and it fetches them unless you went and turned that off. Failed requests count. That one deserves its own section. Whose meter counts? Your own counters and the seller's dashboard will disagree with each other, and the seller's number is the one that ends up on the invoice. The gap comes from where the 2 sides measure. You count the bytes your client handed to your parser. They count everything that crossed their box, which includes the headers, the compression they undid on the way through, and the connection attempts that never returned a body at all. A 10% gap is normal and nobody is cheating you. A 40% gap means you are being metered on something you did not know you were sending. Check it in week 1 while the amounts are still small enough that being wrong about it is cheap. Blocks are billed on most metered plans. A block page is a page. A capture wall is a page too, and it is frequently heavier than the thing you were trying to read in the first place. The meter has no idea you got nothing useful out of it, so the targets that fight you hardest are the targets where your counter spins fastest. Sit with that for a moment, because it is the whole case against metered pricing for scraping work. You buy a proxy because a site is difficult. The more difficult that site is, the more you retry, the more interstitial junk you are served, and the larger your invoice. The model charges you most in exactly the situation you bought the product to survive. On the easy sites, you never needed it. Retries are the multiplier. Say your scraper retries 3 times before it gives up, and your success rate on a hard target sits around 60%. Your real traffic lands nearer 70 gigabytes than the 40 you budgeted for. I have watched a month come in at double the estimate on retries alone. Nobody had done anything wrong. The target had quietly added a challenge page in week 2, and my numbers were written in week 1. The terms that decide the invoice: minimum commitment. Plenty of plans have a floor you pay whether you touch it or not. $3 a gigabyte with a 50 gigabyte floor is a $150 plan, including in the month you only pull 10 rollover. Does unused traffic carry forward? Usually no, sometimes for 30 days. That matters more than it sounds if your work is lumpy, and scraping work is lumpy. Then what happens when you hit the cap? There are 3 behaviors out there, and they are nowhere near each other. A hard stop, which kills your pipeline at 4 in the morning. An automatic top-up at the same rate, which is fine and nobody minds. An automatic top-up at a penalty rate, which is how a $200 month turns into $900. That last one usually lives on the terms page rather than the pricing page. Go and read it before you need to. And the figure printed on the card at the top is normally the annual prepay price divided by 12. The month-to-month price sits further down in smaller type, sometimes 40% higher. Compare the same billing term on both sides, or you are weighing a year of commitment against a rolling month. The geography clause. The cheap tier usually excludes the country you actually need. This is the widest gap between the headline and the invoice. A pool is priced low because it is a global pool, and global means wherever the seller has the most supply sitting around. Ask for Singapore or Germany or anywhere that is not a large cheap market, and there is a second price weighting, often a multiple of the first. Sometimes that surcharge is in small text under the table. Sometimes you find it the first time you set a country parameter and the request comes back empty. So check the geography before you even look at the price. A plan that cannot serve your country is free and worthless at the same time. Concurrency in the cheap tier. Metered plans very often cap concurrent sessions on the lower tiers, and that cap tends to live somewhere other than next to the price. You buy traffic, you write a scraper with 40 workers, and you learn the plan allows 5, so you run at 5 and miss your schedule. Or you upgrade, which was the entire reason the cap existed. Do the sums in their unit before you compare anything. The method is dull and it works. Before you put 2 sellers side by side, convert your own job into each seller's unit properly with numbers out of your own logs. You need 4 figures, requests per month, average bytes per request, measured against your real target instead of guessed at, your failure rate on that target, and peak concurrency, which is decided by how fast the job has to finish, rather than by how fast you would enjoy it finishing. The bytes figure is the one people skip, and it moves the total more than any of the others. Run a few hundred requests through whatever you already have. Read your own counters, 20 minutes of work. Then build the comparison in your unit, in your own spreadsheet, on your own terms. Their page was laid out to be read on theirs. Buy 1 small month instead of taking a trial. A trial tells you about a trial. When a seller opens one, they hand over addresses that work. That is not dishonest. Any of us would do the same, and I have done it myself. The addresses you get after payment come out of the general pool, and so does the support queue you land in at 3 in the morning on a Saturday. So buy the smallest paid month on offer and run the real job through it. That costs you 1 month and it tells you about the product you would actually own. I once paid for a single month at 3 different sellers in the same week before choosing one of them, about $100 in total, and it saved me from a 12-month commitment I would have hated by March. Where I come down on this: metered pricing is the wrong shape for scraping. It treats traffic as the scarce thing, when the scarce thing is a request that does not get refused, and it sends the biggest bill on the hardest targets, which is backwards from where the value sits. Per port and per thread pricing looks worse on the page and is usually cheaper in the bank statement because the number stops moving. You know in January what December will cost. For a job that runs continuously, a fixed line you can plan around beats a meter you cannot. That is a position rather than a fact. Plenty of people who scrape for a living think I am wrong about it, and on some jobs their bills are lower than mine. The limit on all of that: metered wins on small and spiky work, and it wins easily. Pull 4,000 pages a month and a metered account cost you a few dollars, while a port cost you a monthly fee to sit idle for 29 days. I keep a metered account open for precisely that, sitting alongside the lines I run myself. The crossover is somewhere in the low tens of gigabytes a month for most people. I cannot give you the exact point because it moves with your failure rate on your own targets, and nothing except your own logs knows that number. I also cannot tell you what a seller's overage rate becomes after the company changes hands. That has happened to me. The pricing page stayed exactly the same for 4 months, and the invoice did not. The questions I send the seller before my card goes anywhere near their form, and the sheet I use to convert their unit into mine, are at proxyscraping.org. Subscribe for more on proxies for scraping.